Hi guys, Mrs. Karaz here. I'm recording once upon a time when I am very sick, so if I sound funny, that's why. Today we're looking at Chapter 3, Colonies Take Root, and we start with Section 1, the first English settlements. So you might wonder why we have a whole chapter, really, that will be dedicated to the English settlements here in the Americas, when last chapter was about many different nations being set up. We pay a lot more attention to the English settlements because those were the settlements that will become the United States. And this is, after all, a U.S. history class. So just an explanation of that. But moving forward. So during the Age of Exploration, which we had looked at in Chapter 2, England had a monarchy. And a monarchy is a government that is ruled by a king or a queen. But the king or queen didn't have absolute power. The monarchy's power was controlled by Parliament. Parliament was a lawmaking body in England, similar to the Senate in the United States today. It's a group of elected officials. It's a legislature is the term we have for a lawmaking body. And they could check the power of the king or queen. So, as another kind of residual of this age of exploration, the English decide that they want to establish colonies in North America for two main reasons. One is to provide new markets for English products. If a good was manufactured in England, they could ship it over and sell it to people here in the colonies. Another was to import raw materials for English industries. So if there's a desk-making company in England, they could cut down trees in the colonies, which are here in what is now the United States, send that timber over to England to be manufactured there. If these two motivations sound familiar to you, they should, because last chapter we talked about mercantilism, and these definitely have to do with mercantilism. How do we make money for ourselves? How do we establish colonies that could benefit the home country? That's exactly what's going on here. So the first English colony here in the United States, or what will eventually become the United States, was established on Roanoke Island, and it was called the Roanoke Colony. Roanoke Island is off the coast of North Carolina, and it was established in 1585. A year later, it was abandoned, and we'll talk about why in class. We have some readings on Roanoke that will definitely play a role for us. A second colony is established in Roanoke in 1587. So 2 years later, they try again. A problem occurs. At this time period, England and Spain are at war. So a ship had brought the English settlers over here to Roanoke, but the leaders had to take that ship and return back to England because that ship was needed for the war effort. England needed all the ships they could get their hands on. They couldn't have something just sitting over here in the colonies. So for 3 years, the colonial leaders were back in England. They were not here helping to set up the colonies. They didn't know, they had no communication with the colonies too, right? This is very, very, very far before FaceTime and Skype and things like that. It was very difficult to check in from a great distance. So it's not until 1590 that those colonial leaders can return to Roanoke. They want to see how the people are doing. They want to see how the colony is progressing. But there are no signs of the colonists. There are no people whatsoever. No signs might be, I might be misspeaking when I say that, because there is some evidence as to what might have happened to them. And again, we'll look at that in class soon. But this is one of the greatest mysteries of American history. What happened to the settlers of Roanoke? Short answer, we don't know. Longer answer, I have 4 options that historians play around with. So maybe they were struck by diseases, right? It's people in a new area, exposed to new germs. Maybe disease got the best of them and they died. Excuse me, guys. Maybe they ran out of supplies and food, especially with the fact that there were some harsh winters within that 3-year period. And maybe they died that way. Maybe the colonists abandoned Roanoke to go stay with the Croatoans, a Native American tribe nearby, and we'll look at why they specifically were suspected. Or maybe the colonists were attacked by a Native American tribe, Croatoan or otherwise, we don't know. So the first English colony was less than successful, let's say, because everyone in it did not make it. But we get people that want to start attempt number 2. So in 1607, a group of wealthy English people joined together to form the Virginia Company. They hoped to discover gold, establish trade with Native Americans, and gain natural resources like lumber from North America. King James I, who is the King of England at this time, grants them a charter. And a charter is like a document granting special permission from the government. So I like to think of a charter almost the way you would think of a pass in class, right? So if I give, Mary Jane the bathroom pass, and then Amanda wants to also go to the bathroom, no, only one person has the pass and can use it. That sounds like a silly example, but a charter is giving one person specific permission to do something. So the charter that King James gives the Virginia Company allows them to sail to North America and establish a colony named Virginia. Virginia will be the name of the larger territory. The first settlement they actually establish is called Jamestown. And yes, you guessed it, named after King James, who gave them permission in the first place. So, let's chat about Jamestown. 100 men from the Virginia Company sailed into the Chesapeake Bay to establish Jamestown in 1607. The first year was bad. The colonists barely survived. There were insects with diseases like malaria that the colonists hadn't been infected by before, and once the colonists were infected, they had a lot of trouble fighting off these diseases. And another problem, right, so besides the actual physical, medical issues these colonists had, it was a bunch of rich people who came over to Jamestown, and in England at this time period, if you were rich, you didn't do much manual labor. You had servants, you had people to do things for you, you didn't have to get your hands dirty. But now here, you're establishing a new colony on a land that was not settled yet. There's a lot of hard physical work required with that. And the colonists struggled. I think it would be easy to say, well, they were just lazy. I don't even think it was an issue of being lazy. They did not know how to do the hard work that needed to be done, and they certainly weren't good at it. So the colonists at Jamestown are really, really struggling for a time, until Powhatan, who is the chief of a local Native American tribe, and his daughter Pocahontas, yes, from the movie, provide food and supplies to the colonists. We're going to look more at the role that Pocahontas and her father play in class over the next few weeks. So here's another familiar name if you're a Disney fan. In 1608, a man named John Smith was sent to Jamestown in order to help the colonists, right? People over in England know that the people here in the colonies are struggling. They send Smith because he's known as a strong leader, and he's had a history of clashing with Native Americans and winning. So Smith comes over, and to be clear, the colonists at Jamestown weren't having problems with the Native Americans at this time, but Smith was someone who could control things if problems arose. When he got to Jamestown, Smith quickly enforced rules and put really strict laws in effect. He had one rule stating that if you didn't work, you wouldn't eat. No one was getting anything for free. You had to carry your own weight. Over time, Smith actually befriends Pocahontas and helps really strengthen the colony at Jamestown. In 1609, Smith gets injured and goes back to England because of an injury. And without Smith kind of at the helm, colonists lose their relationship with the Native Americans, and a starving time arises where colonists are struggling to meet even their most basic needs. They're struggling to literally eat what they need to get through the day. Like I said about Pocahontas, we'll be coming back to talk more about this in the next few weeks, so bear with me. Okay, but after the starving time, they make it through the starving time, and not many. There are a lot of deaths. But once the starving time passes, Jamestown's luck begins to turn around because the colonists discover that a very lucrative crop, and remember, lucrative means you can make a lot of money selling it, could be grown in North America, and that crop is tobacco. So in the 1580s, smoking tobacco had become really popular in Europe, and immediately the colonists know this is how they're going to make their money, this is how they're going to find a way to survive in the colonies. tobacco begins being grown in Virginia and exported to Europe. It sold so well there that new colonists began coming to America in order to grow this crop. People knew what an opportunity this was. Everybody wanted it. We could grow it here. Awesome. Okay, so moving on to some of the laws and rules that pop up here. So the English colonies in America had to follow laws established by Parliament and England's monarchs, but they also needed a form of local government. So the House of Burgesses develops. And in the House of Burgesses, colonists elect officials, and those officials make choices for them. They could pass laws and set taxes. Really, the English government had supreme power. The House of Burgesses was like a step down when it came to ruling over the people. And the House of Burgesses was the first representative government in North America. And a representative government, we've discussed before, is the government where voters elect representatives to make laws for them. If it sounds like a republic, you're right, it should. Okay, so in the summer of 1619, the Dutch brought 20 Africans who had been captured and enslaved to America. Initially, enslaved people could earn their freedom by working toward a certain number of years, but toward the end of the 1600s, the option would come off the table and slavery would become a way of life here, especially in the South. We're going to get to, in the future, the ways that the plantation system that grew around those crops, like tobacco, really made slavery put an emphasis on slavery as a part of our culture here in the colonies. I'm pausing us here. We are not all the way through section 1, but I'm freezing here because there's a lot of information that we need to break down in class before we move on to section 1, part 2. So without further ado, have a lovely afternoon, ladies and gents. See you tomorrow.